My name is Major Ellie Patel, 34 years old, United States Army. 12 years ago, my brother punched me in the face at his wedding rehearsal because his fiancée called me trash. Yesterday, they showed up at my San Diego villa, broke, desperate, and begging. I didn't open the gate yet. What would you do if family once exiled you, then came back asking for mercy? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more echoes of revenge. My name is Major Ellie Patel, 34 years old, United States Army. Yesterday, I stood at the gate of my San Diego villa watching an old Ford rattle up the drive. The salt air was still, the Pacific behind me calm and endless, a contrast to the storm walking toward my fence. Inside the car sat my brother Jackson and his wife Diane. 12 years since I'd last seen them, and now they looked like survivors of a war of their own making. When Jackson climbed out, his shoulders sagged, his eyes hollow. Diane stayed seated, her sunglasses reflecting the sun. "We're moving in," she said flatly. I didn't answer. I simply pressed the remote on my keychain. The iron gate slid shut with a low mechanical growl, a perimeter secured. I met Jackson's eyes once through the bars, then turned and walked back toward the house. You learn in the service that before every operation, you study the past, what led to this contact, what broke the line. So before I tell you what happened yesterday, I need to return to the night that ended everything. It was Seattle, 12 years ago. Rain-slick streets, the air smelling of wet asphalt and lake water. Jackson's rehearsal dinner sat on the edge of Lake Union, glass windows catching reflections of distant city lights. Inside, warm laughter and the soft clink of silverware filled the room. I'd worn my Army service uniform for the occasion. Deep blue jacket pressed to perfection, brass polished until it gleamed. In my pocket rested a letter of commendation from my commanding officer, recognition for finishing top of my training class. It wasn't about showing off. It was proof that I'd built something of worth. When I spotted Jackson near the bar, his grin was familiar. Easy. "Ellie, there's my little soldier," he said, wrapping an arm around me. For a second, the years between us vanished. "I wanted to show you something," I said, unfolding the letter. Before he could take it, a manicured hand reached in. Diane, red nails, perfect posture. She plucked the page, scanning it like a menu she hadn't ordered. "How cute," she murmured, voice just loud enough for the nearby tables. "Like a little gold star." She handed it back as if returning a child's drawing. Jackson chuckled, tipsy, unaware. "That's my sister, always overachieving." Her eyes met mine over his shoulder. They were smiling, but only on the surface. Later, I was trying to breathe past the embarrassment when she reappeared, a glass of red wine in hand. She stumbled, a practiced gasp escaping her lips, and the liquid arced through the air, staining the white of my shirt like a wound. Gasps, napkins, apologies. And then her whisper, hot against my ear. "See? You don't belong here." I held the words down like a live grenade and excused myself. In the restroom, I tried to scrub the stain away, but it only spread deeper. Then the door opened. Diane again. "Mask off now." "You did that on purpose," I said quietly. She smiled into the mirror. "Prove it." Through the frosted glass, a silhouette, broad shoulders, familiar stance. Jackson. Instantly, Diane's expression shifted. Her voice cracked with feigned fear. "Please don't," she whimpered, backing away. The door swung open. "She's threatening me," Diane cried, rushing to him. "She said she'd ruin the wedding." Jackson's confusion hardened into anger. "What did you do, Ellie?" "She's lying," I said. But he wasn't listening. His hand clamped my arm, his voice rising. "You've always been jealous." Then came the punch. Not a shove, not a slap. A soldier knows the difference. The impact burst white behind my eyes. The restaurant fell silent. "You're not my sister anymore," he said, voice flat, final. I left without a word. Hours later, I sat alone in SeaTac Airport, uniform stained, cheek throbbing, flight not till dawn. The floor buffer hummed somewhere down the hall. I looked at the letter still folded in my pocket, now creased and useless. Families are supposed to be safe ground. Mine had just become hostile territory. That night, I made a vow. If blood could betray me, then discipline would rebuild me. Tomorrow's mission, my own. When I left Seattle that night, I didn't just board a plane. I deployed into a different kind of war. The kind fought in silence, in early mornings, and in choices no one ever sees. Grief has two paths, collapse or construction. I chose construction. I volunteered for everything no one else wanted. The rough billets, the remote postings, the unforgiving terrain. Iraq first, then Afghanistan. The air smelled of dust and diesel. Days bled into nights, the horizon a haze of sand and heat. There were no family dinners, no phone calls, just missions, maps, and marching orders. Out there, clarity reigned. You followed protocol, trusted your unit, and earned respect through competence, not birthright. I remember one night in Kandahar, our convoy pinned under fire from a ridgeline. A 19-year-old private beside me started to break. Breath short, eyes wide, weapons shaking. Panic spreads fast. It's contagious in the dark. I crawled across the dirt, grabbed his shoulder. "Look at me," I said quietly. "Inhale. Exhale. You're trained for this." He met my eyes, latched onto my voice like a rope. Together we found the rhythm. In, out, in, out. When he steadied, I pointed toward the ridge. "Return fire on my mark." We made it through that night. No heroics, no speeches, just calm execution. That was the Army's gift. In chaos, I learned to become order. Between deployments, I threw myself into advanced courses. Logistics, intelligence, crisis leadership. Every ribbon, every citation felt like armor laid over a wound. The promotion board didn't just see numbers. They saw someone unbreakable. Major came at 34. Early, earned, documented. But medals don't silence ghosts. Some nights I'd wake in the barracks soaked in sweat, not from combat dreams, but from that restaurant in Seattle. Diane's smirk, Jackson's fist, his voice saying I wasn't family. Eventually, even soldiers have to face the things they can't outwork. The Army calls it behavioral health. I called it mandatory maintenance. I showed up once a week, same as PT, same as marksmanship. My therapist treated my grief like an after-action review. "What was the objective?" she'd ask. "To be respected," I'd answer. "And what was the outcome?" "Failure." "So what's the lesson learned?" That family is not a rank. Respect is not owed by blood. Each session stripped away noise until the core remained. I couldn't change the past, but I could control what came next. That's when I met Chaplain Miller, Vietnam era, calm as an oak tree, eyes that saw straight through bravado. He never quoted scripture unless invited. Mostly, he listened. One afternoon, I asked, "What do you do when the people you love become your enemy?" He smiled faintly. "You build new allies, Major. The kind forged in loyalty, not lineage." Those words became doctrine. When my third deployment ended, I rotated to California, assignment at a regional command, stable hours. I bought a small modern house overlooking the Pacific, funded solely by my pay and combat bonuses. Clean lines, minimal furniture, a perimeter gate. Not to keep the world out, but to remind myself I controlled entry now. My walls were bare except for one framed item, the letter of commendation Diane once mocked. The wine stain was still faintly visible, ghosted through the paper. I kept it that way, proof that pride can survive impact. 12 years passed like steady salutes, each one a day without contact. My mother's emails became rare, polite. I replied the same. I never asked about Jackson. Some files stay sealed, until the one that didn't. It was a Tuesday. Sunlight poured across the kitchen counter. My inbox pinged. Sender, Mom. Subject, Jackson. For a full minute, I just stared, cursor hovering over delete. But training overrides impulse. Never ignore new intel. Always assess. I opened it. Ellie, I know we haven't spoken much, but I didn't know who else to turn to. Jackson is in trouble. They lost the house. Diane's not well. They have nowhere to go. The words were brief, stripped of plea, but heavy with expectation. I sat back, eyes on the horizon. The Pacific rolled endlessly, indifferent. 12 years of silence, breached not by apology, but by desperation. I exhaled slowly. Every mission begins with reconnaissance. Tomorrow I'd gather intel, not as a sister, as a soldier. I responded to my mother's email the same way I would respond to a field report. Clinically, without emotion. Acknowledged. Will assess situation. Do not forward my address. Then I set the parameters. At 0900 hours, I sent a single text to the number still saved under Jackson, Seattle. 1400. Better Buzz Coffee, Hillcrest. Come alone. No greeting, no explanation. In the military, clarity prevents confusion, and confusion leads to loss. At exactly 1350, I arrived. Hillcrest's Better Buzz was half full. College students on laptops, retirees reading papers, the hiss of milk steamers, pop music low in the background, civilians chatting about weekend plans while I prepared for a debrief 12 years overdue. I chose a corner table, back to the wall, view of both exits. Old habits. At 14:05, Jackson entered. Late. In uniform, that's already a bad start. He looked smaller. Clothes wrinkled, jaw unshaven, eyes downcast. I almost didn't recognize him. The man who once stood taller than anyone in my world. Hey, he said quietly, sliding into the seat. I didn't return the word. Situation report, what happened? He blinked, startled by the tone. Then, haltingly, it came out. The layoff 8 months ago. The dwindling savings, Diane's spending, unpaid mortgage, the motel room that was almost out of time. I listened. No interruptions. Just the steady hum of the espresso machine behind him. When he finished, silence filled the space between us. His eyes lifted, searching for the sister who used to fix everything. Ellie, please, we just need a place for a few months. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the table. Calm, composed. Thank you for your report. Now let's conduct an after-action review. The last 12 years. His brow furrowed. What? Fact 1. I began evenly. You assaulted me in public. Fact 2. You declared I was not your sister. Fact 3. You made no contact during my deployments, including Iraq and Afghanistan. Ellie, I was drunk. I held up a hand. Excuses are irrelevant to the record. His gaze dropped. The door chimed behind him. A familiar perfume hit before the voice. What are you doing to him? Diane. Still immaculate, still armed with contempt. She marched toward us, heels clacking like incoming fire. Are you interrogating him? I didn't turn my head. You were told to stay home. I'm his wife, she snapped, trying to slide into the booth beside him. I lifted my palm slightly. Stand. She froze. Maybe it was the tone. Not loud, not angry, but commanding. Even Jackson's eyes widened. Sit down, Ellie, he muttered, flustered. I stood instead, smoothing my blouse. This is not a reunion. This is a briefing. The debrief is over. Diane folded her arms. Oh my God, you're still holding a grudge? That was a silly little argument. A broken bone heals. A broken bond takes discipline. I met her gaze. And you don't get to define the timeline. Her lip curled. You think you're better than us because you wear a uniform? No, I said quietly, because I learned accountability. I turned back to Jackson. You will receive an email by 2100 with the terms of assistance. You'll have 24 hours to accept or decline. No negotiations. Ellie, dismissed. Then I walked out. No raised voice, no slammed door. Just precision. That evening, I sat at my desk, the same one where every operation of my adult life had been planned, and opened a blank document. The cursor blinked like a waiting signal light. Subject: Terms of Assistance. I outlined it as any operations order, OPORD. Clear objective, scope, contingencies, accountability. 1 housing support. I will cover security deposit and 3 months rent for a modest 2-bedroom in Chula Vista. No cosign, no ownership transfer. Temporary runway only. 2 employment reintegration. Jackson will submit a minimum of 5 verified applications per week. Status email due every Friday by 1700 hours. Non-compliance, JAO, termination of support. 3 mandatory counseling. Both parties to attend weekly family therapy sessions. 6 prepaid. 1 unexcused absence voids agreement. 4 terms of contact. No unannounced visits. Communication limited to scheduled text email. Perimeter boundaries remain absolute. 5 dependent support. I will open 599 accounts for the children contingent on parents attending 3 financial planning sessions. Innocent parties will not be punished for parental negligence. Before sending, I called Chaplain Miller. "Sir, they've resurfaced," I said. He exhaled softly. "Act from your strength, Major, not your wound." "Yes, sir." I reread the document once more. It was unemotional, clear, professional, not a handout, an operation. At 20:59, I clicked send. The next move was theirs. The next 24 hours felt like standing on a rifle range after ceasefire, quiet, heavy, waiting for someone to call the score. I ran along the coast that morning, 3 miles out and back, but every wave sounded like a ticking clock. By 2050 hours, I'd accepted the silence as their answer. Pride rarely surrenders under deadline. At 20:59, my phone rang. Caller ID, Jackson. I let it ring twice before answering. Patel. A shaky breath on the other end. We accept. The line went dead. No gratitude, no apology. Just those 2 words. But in the language of broken families, that was movement. The first therapy session took place a week later, in a low-rise building tucked between a yoga studio and a tax office. Neutral ground. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender and printer ink. The waiting room was quiet, just the soft click of a wall clock. We were led into a smaller space, sage green walls, framed quotes about growth, a box of tissues on the coffee table like standard issue gear. The therapist introduced herself as Dr. Anna Sharma. Steady voice, eyes that measured without judgment. "Thank you for coming," she said. "This is not about blame. It's about clarity." I nodded once. Diane folded her arms. Jackson slumped in his chair, the weight of 12 years pressing down. "Let's begin with why you're here," Dr. Sharma said. Diane seized the opening. "Because his sister has held a grudge for over a decade," she said, each word polished for performance. "That night was chaos. Everyone had too much to drink. It's time to grow up." Her tone was rehearsed, professional victimhood. I'd heard better acting during safety stand-down skits. Dr. Sharma's pen moved once across her notepad. "Ellie, how do you view it?" I kept my posture formal, back straight, hands resting on my knees. "I'm here because my assistance was contingent on therapy. The incident 12 years ago is a matter of record." "Go on." Fact 1, at a rehearsal dinner, Diane referred to my service uniform as trash. Fact 2, Jackson struck me in the face. Fact 3, I was ordered out of the family. Silence, only the clock. "Are these facts disputed?" the therapist asked. Jackson's voice cracked. I don't remember all the details. I was drinking." "Answer the question, please," she said gently. His eyes darted to Diane. She gave a tiny shake of her head. Still, something in him faltered. His shoulders sagged. "Yes." he whispered. I hit her. He swallowed hard. I pushed her. It was a punch, I said. Calm, factual. He didn't argue. It wasn't triumph, I felt. Just the first honest sound after years of static. Dr. Sharma nodded once. Acknowledgement is step one. The goal isn't punishment. It's ownership. Diane rolled her eyes. He said sorry 100 times. Not to me, I replied quietly. That ended the debate. At the close of session 1, Dr. E. Sharma gave us homework, a simple directive that felt like an ambush. Each of you will write a letter to the person you were 12 years ago, she said. Not to each other, to yourselves. Be honest. Bring them next week. I didn't answer. Orders were orders. That weekend, I sat on my balcony overlooking the Pacific. The sky was bruised purple, the tide low. A legal pad lay on the table, pen aligned beside it. To the Jackson of 12 years ago, I wrote. I told him about the little sister who once thought he hung the moon, about scraped knees and bike rides and rooftop promises, about the night that promise broke. I didn't write as a soldier or a victim. I wrote as a witness. You were my front line. And when you turned your weapon inward, I lost more than family. I lost belief. By the time I set the pen down, the page was wet. One tear. Controlled release. Then I folded the sheet and sealed it in a drawer. Classified. Session 2 came fast. Dr. Sharma opened with Diane. How was the exercise? It was childish, she scoffed. I just wrote what I already knew. She never liked me. She thought she was better. Everyone did. Why did you feel that way? Diane hesitated. Because he looked at her like she was a hero, and I was just there. Not an apology, just a crack in the wall. Then it was Jackson's turn. His voice was raw. I started one letter blaming everything. It felt false. So I wrote another. He looked at me, eyes bloodshot. It said I was a coward, that I hurt the only person who never gave up on me. And I'm sorry. For the first time in 12 years, the word didn't sound like a plea. It sounded like truth. And for the first time, I allowed silence to be the answer. Therapy is theory until it meets terrain. Dr. Sharma knew that. At the end of our 4th session, she looked at me over her glasses and said, the next step is exposure. Controlled, safe, in a neutral environment. My instinct was immediate. Not ready. Her reply was simple. Readiness isn't always comfort, Major. It's capacity. She suggested Balboa Park. Open space, public setting, daylight. Bring the children. Let them see reconciliation modeled, not just discussed. I hesitated. Children were untrained elements, unpredictable, emotionally direct. But I understood the logic. In the Army, you test a new procedure under pressure. This would be our field test. Sunday came bright and warm, the kind of San Diego morning tourists frame for postcards. I arrived 15 minutes early. Standard protocol. I chose a bench near the botanical garden, back to the wall, full view of the approach routes. Old habits never die. They just become quieter. When I saw them, it was Diane's cautious posture I noticed first, followed by Jackson's nervous hands. But between them were 2 children, small, curious, holding each parent's fingers like anchor points. Leo, 9. Leah, 7. My nephew and niece, the next generation of Patel, unaware of the fracture above them. Leah reached me first, curls bouncing. Are you a real soldier? She asked. Mom said you were a soldier. Her bluntness disarmed me. I nodded. Yes, a real one. She studied me like an artifact. Then why don't you come to our house? The question hit harder than any punch. For a moment, even Diane's practiced poise wavered. Jackson froze, his mouth half open, no prepared answer ready. I crouched to eye level. Sometimes grown-ups need time to learn how to be friends again, I said softly, and that takes practice. She considered this, then gave a serious nod. Okay. We began walking. The kids darted ahead, chasing pigeons, while the adults stayed behind. Careful. Measured. Conversation was small talk. The weather, school, traffic, the linguistic equivalent of minefield navigation. But then it happened. The unplanned variable every operation faces. Leah, running full speed down the walkway, tripped on an uneven patch of pavement. The sound of her cry sliced through the park. Jackson lunged forward, then froze, helpless. Diane gasped, hands fluttering. Training took over. I was beside Leah in seconds, lowering myself to the ground. "Hey, soldier," I said. Calm and even. "Let's check for damage." Her knee was scraped, bleeding lightly. She sniffled, eyes wide. "This might sting for a second," I told her, pulling my small IFAK from my purse, a habit I never break. I tore open a wipe, cleaned the wound gently, steady pressure. "There, bad guy's out." She watched, holding still. When it was clean, I reached into the kit again and pulled out the secret weapon, a unicorn bandage, pink and ridiculous. I smoothed it across her knee. "All patched up." She blinked at it, then at me, and before I could move, she threw her arms around my neck. "Thank you, Aunt Ellie." Her small voice broke something open. Not pain, but something older, quieter. A word I hadn't heard in over a decade, said without hesitation. "Aunt." Over her shoulder, I saw Jackson and Diane watching. Diane's expression, for once, carried no edge. Just something human. Maybe recognition, maybe respect. Jackson looked shattered, as if realizing how much time he'd lost. On the walk back to the parking lot, the kids held my hands, one on each side. I felt the weight of them, the steadiness. At the car, Leo tugged his father's sleeve. "Dad?" he asked. "Did you and Aunt Ellie have a fight?" Jackson knelt down beside him. I stayed silent, observing. He could have dodged, could have softened, but he didn't. "No," he said, voice steady but low. "Dad was wrong, a long time ago, and I'm trying really hard now to see if she can forgive me." The words hung in the warm air, simple, unguarded. That was the moment I realized. Apologies in therapy are theory. Apologies spoken before your children. That's doctrine. From then on, they followed every rule without exception. Every Friday at 1700 hours, a concise email arrived. 5 job applications submitted. Rent payment confirmed. Counseling attended. No embellishment. No excuses. Just data. For the first time in 12 years, Jackson understood reporting structure. And for the first time, I didn't need to correct him. Forgiveness, I learned, doesn't arrive with ceremony. It comes disguised as paperwork, routines, and silence that no longer feels hostile. Over the next year, everything unfolded like a slow campaign. Not a miracle, but a process. 12 months of measured rebuilding, one verifiable act at a time. Jackson found a job in logistics. Ironic, maybe, but fitting. It came through a contact in my veteran network, a retired colonel who ran a private distribution firm in Chula Vista. "He's green," I'd told him, "but willing." Jackson started at the bottom. Warehouse scheduling, inventory control. No corner office, no title to hide behind. The work was humbling. Long hours, physical labor, accountability for every misrouted shipment. But he didn't quit. For the first time, his life moved under discipline instead of impulse. Every Friday at 1700, the email came. Short, precise, never late. Employment status? Stable. 5 applications completed. Rent paid on time. Counseling attended. No apologies, no storytelling, just metrics. I logged each report into a separate folder. It wasn't about control. It was about evidence. Patterns reveal truth. Diane, to her credit, found part-time work at a department store. I knew it from the receipts in their budgeting summaries. She stopped hiding behind polish. For once, she stood on her own earnings. Humility looks different on everyone. On her, it looked almost honest. They stayed in the two-bedroom in Chula Vista, paying rent after the first 90 days without a single extension request. No breaches, no unannounced visits. My perimeter remained intact. Dr. Sharma's sessions continued monthly. The tension slowly drained from the room until the air felt breathable. Sometimes Diane even laughed. Small, self-conscious, but real. Jackson listened more than he spoke, which for a man once ruled by pride was progress. 10 months in, I received a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Ellie. It's Diane. Could we meet for coffee?" Just us. My first reaction was caution. Every instinct warned me. Solo contact with a former adversary violates protocol. But another voice, quieter, older, reminded me that growth isn't built behind barricades. I agreed. We met at the same Better Buzz Coffee where this new chapter began. Different time, different terrain. She arrived early. No perfume, no designer armor, just jeans, a plain blouse, eyes that didn't dart for advantage. "I owe you an apology," she said. "No theatrics, no tears." "A real one." I stayed silent, let her own the moment. "I was jealous," she said. "You had purpose. You wore respect like a uniform. And he looked at you like you were untouchable. I wanted that." She looked down at her hands. "So I tore you down. I lied. I let him hit you. I told myself you deserved it, but I was wrong." I studied her face, searching for performance. There was none. Just a woman facing the debris she'd made. "Apology accepted," I said simply. Nothing more. In the Army, acknowledgement ends the report. You don't gloat over compliance. She exhaled shakily, nodded once, and left. When Thanksgiving arrived, I decided to test the final parameter. Inclusion. Not erasure, not amnesty. Inclusion with boundaries. I hosted it at my villa overlooking the Pacific. The table stretched across the patio, sunset bleeding gold across the water. My chosen family came first. 2 soldiers from my old unit, a retired supply sergeant, and Chaplain Miller, now gray and slower but still steady. At 1600 hours, the familiar Ford pulled up. It didn't look broken down anymore. It looked lived in. Leo and Leah tumbled out, laughing. Jackson carried a pie. Diane held her own dish. Homemade, unpolished, earnest. This time I opened the gate myself before they reached it. No hesitation. Inside worlds blended. My battle-hardened sergeant sat cross-legged while Leah painted glitter stars on his face. Chaplain Miller debated brining versus basting with Jackson over the turkey. Laughter carried across the courtyard, steady and human. After dinner, as the sun dropped behind the horizon, Jackson joined me on the balcony. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The ocean murmured below, same as it always had. "Thank you," he said finally, voice thick, "for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you." I shook my head. "I didn't do it for you, Jack. I did it to keep that night from defining me." He nodded, eyes wet but steady. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A lapel pin, gold and worn. The West Point crest. "I bought it a few years ago," he said quietly. Couldn't bring myself to throw it away. "I think it belongs to you." I took it, felt the weight, cool metal, etched words. Duty, honor, country. Just then, Diane stepped out holding 2 slices of pie. She handed one to me, her gaze steady. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not throwing us away." I met her eyes. "Boundaries aren't walls," I said. "They're maps." Below, the children laughed in the yard, chasing fireflies in the dusk. For the first time in 12 years, the sound didn't hurt. It healed. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the last of the dishes were stacked neatly in the sink, I stepped out onto the balcony again. The ocean was calm, black glass stretching to the horizon, moonlight sliding over its surface like silver ink. For years, this view had been my solitude, my fortress. Tonight, it felt like something else. Not an outpost. A home. The laughter from earlier still echoed faintly in the air. My niece's voice mixing with the deep, amused rumble of my old comrades. For 12 years, I believed peace would come only when justice was delivered, when they finally admitted what they'd done. But peace is quieter than that. It doesn't arrive with apologies. It arrives when you can hear a child laugh in your house again and feel no bitterness. I looked down at the West Point pin in my hand. It wasn't just metal. It was a relic of who I used to be. The girl who wanted her brother's pride more than anything. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my life chasing honor through institutions, discipline, rank. But the truest honor I ever earned came from holding my line with grace. Not vengeance. Not submission. When I was a cadet, one of my instructors used to say, "A soldier's strength isn't tested in combat. It's tested in restraint." Back then, I thought he was talking about firefights. Now I understood. Real discipline is not in striking back. It's in standing your ground without becoming what hurt you. Jackson and I will never be the same siblings we once were. That roof in Seattle, those shared cups of burnt coffee, they belong to a different lifetime. But in their place stands something steadier, earned respect. He knows now what his words cost, what his silence built. And I know what I'm capable of when I lead from clarity, not pain. Diane's apology, simple, sincere, unembellished, taught me something too. The people who once wounded us can still evolve. They may never undo the past, but they can meet us at the present with open eyes. Forgiveness isn't permission. It's acknowledgement that their hold on your story has expired. I pressed the pin between my fingers, its edges firm, grounding. Then I placed it back in my pocket. Not as a token of nostalgia, but as evidence. Evidence that I had lived through betrayal without letting it define me. As the waves rolled in below, I realized something simple. The longest war I ever fought wasn't in Iraq or Afghanistan. It was the one between my discipline and my grief. Between who I was told I was and who I chose to become. And tonight, for the first time, I knew who had won. If you've ever had to rebuild your peace from the ruins of someone else's choices, if you've ever drawn a boundary not out of anger but out of self-respect, I hope this story reminded you that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stands its post. Have you ever seen someone underestimated until they proved everyone wrong? If you have, tell me in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. We post new stories every day. Stories of quiet power, hidden strength, and the discipline it takes to walk your own path. Until next time, stand tall, stay calm, and never mistake silence for weakness.